back here at home on the campaign trail, believe it or not, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, well, they're behind closed doors this Sunday. Not together, but in separate meetings. They have no rallies, no speeches, no big events. It's largely a quiet weekend for Mrs. Clinton after she had some fundraising on Martha's Vineyard. You know, they say she raised $1.5 million yesterday. No public events, though, for Mr. Trump after an event-filled week that saw another staffing overhaul in his campaign, an apology for causing some people pain, he said, all making Republican National Committee Chairman Reince Priebus praising Mr. Trump for seemingly shifting his tone somewhat.
Someone who lies with incredible skill and grace.
And Kristen Fisher joins us now with the very latest in the campaign trail. Hi, Kristen.
Hey, Eric. The candidates may be taking the day off, but their campaign managers certainly are not. Today, Trump's new campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, she made headlines this morning when she said it's, quote, to be determined whether Trump still supports a deportation force to remove undocumented immigrants from the United States. Remember, that idea has been a big part of Trump's campaign, especially during the primaries. Conway also said Trump just had the best week of his entire campaign because, in her words, he's finally able to be himself. Perhaps a dig at former campaign chair Paul Manafort, who resigned earlier this week amid reports about his alleged ties to Russia. It's something Clinton's campaign manager, Robbie Mook, seized upon today on ABC's This Week.
We now need Donald Trump to explain to us the extent to which the hand of the Kremlin is at the core of his own campaign. There's a web of financial interests that have not been disclosed, and there are real questions being raised about whether Donald Trump himself is just a puppet for the Kremlin in this race.
So while the Clinton campaign is focused on Trump and Russia, the Trump campaign is going after the Clinton Foundation for what it calls a blatant conflict of interest, a foundation that was accepting foreign donations while Hillary Clinton was still Secretary of State. Well, today, former New York City mayor and Trump supporter Rudy Giuliani went so far as to say this. Listen.
If I were back in my old job as U.S. Attorney, I would probably indict the Clinton Foundation as a racketeering enterprise. She did favors for those very people who gave money to the Clinton Foundation.
Some strong words. So Clinton spent the weekend fundraising on Cape Cod and Martha's Vineyard, and she will continue that effort tomorrow in Los Angeles. Well, Trump, he's off to Ohio. He's got a big rally planned tomorrow night at the University of Akron. Eric?
All right, everybody's back to work on Monday. Kristen, thanks so much.
Well, Eric, meanwhile, President Obama heading home later today from Martha's Vineyard after a 2-week summer vacation with his family. The president has a full plate waiting for him in Washington as he moves into the final months of his presidency. First up, a visit to flood-stricken Louisiana. The president receiving some criticism for not going there sooner. White House correspondent Kevin Corke is traveling with the president on Martha's Vineyard. Kevin?
Hey there, Arthel. You're right. Optics matter, especially when you're on vacation, right? And even though the administration did the right thing in sending the director of FEMA and the Secretary of Homeland Security down there to the region to sort of survey the recovery effort, sometimes you just have to be there when you're the president. And on Tuesday, finally, the president will, in fact, make his way down to the bayou to see firsthand what is going on in the recovery effort. He'll also learn a great deal about the people of Louisiana and how they came together in the midst of this devastating tragedy. But even as the president finally puts down his clubs to pick up the spirits of the people of Louisiana, he is, you're right, going to continue to face some criticism from a lot of folks who feel like he should have been there already. Here's just some of what the Advocate editorial staff wrote in an editorial earlier this week. That's the big paper, by the way, over in Baton Rouge. It reads in part, the optics of Obama golfing while Louisiana residents languished in floodwaters was striking. It evoked the precedent of the passive federal response to the state's agony in 2005, a chapter of history no one should ever repeat. Now, that reference to 2005, of course, a reference to Hurricane Katrina. Now, to be fair, the governor of the state of Louisiana did say earlier today that he wanted the president to wait before coming down so as not to interfere with the rescue and recovery operation. Listen.
I didn't want to divert these police officers, sheriff's deputies, and state troopers and other essential resources and assets to providing security for the president while they were needed in this region.
Of course, this has been the argument that the White House has been making for some time, that they wanted to wait until the governor said it was okay to come down there. But again, the other side of this argument is simply this. When Hurricane Sandy struck New Jersey and parts of the metro area up in New York, he got right up there in a couple of days without such consideration. So again, you can see it both ways. Either way, we will be there Tuesday for you, Arthel. In the meantime, back to you.
And we will look forward to your report, Kevin Cork. Thank you very much. Eric?
Arthel, a trip to a water park goes tragically wrong. Emergency crews rush to try and save the life of a man who was pulled from the rough waters. And Donald Trump, as we've been reporting, while his campaign shakeup faces its first full week coming up with the new team at the helm. But is it enough to get his bid for the White House back on track? Coming up, we'll ask our political panel when we come back.
Donald Trump is extremely focused now. If you look at this entire week, you can see it was focused on issues, hard issues, tough issues, issues on which the American people agree with him.
Time now for a quick check of the headlines for you. Pope Francis paying tribute to the victims of that deadly terror attack in Turkey, leading a silent prayer in St. Peter's Square. Later, the Holy Father saying, quote, "We ask for the gift of peace for all." There was tragedy at a water park in Washington State. A man in his 30s drowned in one of the park's pools. This happened in the town of Federal Way, which is near Tacoma. Lifeguards pulled him out of the waves, but sadly they were not able to revive him.
Republican Party leaders offering lots of praise for their candidate Donald Trump, saying he's getting his campaign on the right track and that new polls should soon reflect his improved performance. Let's talk about it now with Nan Hayworth, former Republican Congresswoman from New York, and Dennis Kucinich, former Democratic Congressman from Ohio and a Fox News contributor. Good to have you both here on the set with me.
Great to be with you.
Okay, Congresswoman Hayworth, thank you. I'll start with you. Do you agree with Mr. Priebus?
I do. And Donald Trump has a great plan for the American people, for all the American people. I love the fact that he made a special effort this week to reach out to members of minorities who've been taken advantage of in many ways and taken for granted by, Dennis, not by you personally, but by our candidate, by the Democratic candidate and party. He has a positive message to put America back to work, get our economy going again, make us safe and secure, and that does need to come forward. This was a great week for him.
How do you see it?
First of all, Labor Day is when the presidential campaign hits the reset button, and it'll be a whole new campaign then. Secretary Clinton's campaign is very much aware that this election is not over, and that Donald Trump has shown an ability to recover after many different gaffes and has shown a willingness to hang in there. Now, whether or not that will result in his victory remains to be seen. And she certainly is a formidable candidate. But again, Labor Day, mark that date, because that's when the race to the finish line truly begins, and anything that happens from that point on could sink a candidate.
Well, you know, Kellyanne Conway, Trump's new campaign manager, was on ABC this week discussing debate logistics and working on debate prep. Let's listen, and then we'll talk about it.
He's very engaged with that. It's actually a very enjoyable pursuit for him. He's a natural communicator, a natural connector with people, and the debates are a fabulous opportunity to force a conversation onto substance. I mean, again, what I learned this week, we had a great week, best week so far, but the other thing I learned is I think Donald Trump is back in Hillary Clinton's head.
All right, Congressman Kucinich, should Hillary Clinton be concerned about debating Donald Trump?
In a word, yes, and here's why. If this was a boxing match, Hillary Clinton is a champ because she can win on points. Very few people have a command of the issues that Secretary Clinton does. On the other hand, Donald Trump's like a brawler. And, you know, he could knock himself out, or he could also knock out the other, his opponent. So this is going to be probably one of the most watched presidential debate seasons that we've ever had.
And continuing with that analogy, Congresswoman Hayworth, so if Donald Trump is the boxer, Hillary Clinton has a cut over her eye, and that's her email use of her private server for emails and her trustworthy factor or lack thereof. So how does Donald Trump keep punching on that cut?
Well, one way is by making the transition that he did this week to emphasizing the message and the issues and to getting his own persona in the background, so to speak, so that the real questions about Hillary Clinton's character and integrity and the very legitimate questions, the evidence-based questions about how she dealt with her, the information that should have been protected on behalf of the United States and was not, and what she was doing for the Clinton Foundation and for her own interests as she was Secretary of State. Those are legitimate questions that do deserve attention.
Okay, and Congressman Kucinich, I want to end with you. How does Donald Trump avoid self-inflicted wounds and costly political missteps going forward?
It's important for him to focus on the needs of the American people, to basically step out of his ego and talk about jobs, about the trade, which has hurt the people, about the TPP, which is a horrible trade deal, about Glass-Steagall and what's happening on Wall Street that could end up hurting the economy. If he focuses on economics, he has a chance. If he doesn't, and there's like more gaffes, Hillary Clinton will win easily.
Well, you get the last word, Congressman Kucinich. Congresswoman Hayworth, good to have you both here. And per both of you, this race is far from over. Eric?
All right, thanks, Arthel. Well, Turkey has suffered more unspeakable heartbreak after that terrorist attack targets innocent people celebrating a wedding. Is that U.S. ally, a fellow member of NATO, quickly becoming a new front in the war on terror? Plus, what will the Middle East look like if ISIS is defeated?
Questions concerning Donald Trump's immigration plan amid reports that Mr. Trump was rethinking his mass deportation policy following a meeting with Hispanic leaders in New York City yesterday. The Trump campaign has since denied those claims, and today his newly appointed campaign manager tried to clarify his position.
What he supports is to make sure that we enforce the law, that we are respectful of those Americans who are looking for well-paying jobs, and that we are fair and humane for those who live among us in this country.
And hello, everyone. I'm Arthel Neville. Welcome to America's election headquarters.
And hello, Arthel. As always, hello, everyone. I'm Eric Shawn. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton's campaign, well, they're pushing back against all those allegations of wrongdoing at the Clinton Foundation. You know, some critics have charged that the Clintons gave special treatment to those bigwigs who gave a lot of money. Well, our campaign manager, Robbie Mook, branded those claims right-wing attacks and says the separation of Mrs. Clinton's work as Secretary of State and the foundation's was, he says, unprecedented. Mook also questions Trump's finances.
Evaluate both candidates here.
Well, for more on the state of play in this race, let's go to Kristen Fisher, who's live in our Washington bureau with the very latest. You know, Kristen, the Clinton campaign apparently has just announced some new fundraising numbers. What do you got?
Well, the Clinton campaign won't confirm it, but the Associated Press is reporting that Clinton's finance director has told staffers that they're halfway to their goal of raising $1 billion with a B for the 2016 race. And they're not showing any signs of slowing down. Over the weekend, Clinton attended fundraisers on Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, and Cape Cod. And they have about 40 more fundraising events planned in 14 states over the next 2 weeks. Right now, the Real Clear Politics average of polls has Clinton ahead by about 5 points, but she is facing renewed vulnerabilities on two familiar fronts, her emails and her family's foundation. Today, Clinton campaign manager Robbie Mook defended the Clinton Foundation by pointing fingers at the Bush Foundation. Listen.
The steps that they've pledged to take as a philanthropic organization are unprecedented. You didn't hear questions about the Bush Foundation when the second Bush president came into office. His family continued to serve on the board there. President Clinton has said he'll step down from the Clinton Foundation board.
Former President Bill Clinton has also said that his foundation will stop accepting foreign donations if his wife wins the White House, though some loopholes may already be emerging in that self-imposed ban. Eric.
All right. Meanwhile, Kristen, the Trump campaign, his immigration plan has caused some controversy on this Sunday, as we saw campaign manager Kellyanne Conway kind of try to clarify his immigration stance, but by doing so, she raised some other questions herself.
She did, and, you know, one of the focal points of Trump's immigration plan has been the creation of a deportation force to remove the 11 million undocumented immigrants from the United States. But listen to what Trump's new campaign manager said when asked about it today on CNN's State of the Union.
Will that plan include a deportation force, the kind that you just heard in that soundbite and that he talked about during the Republican primaries?
To be determined.
To be determined. So there's a lot of questions surrounding Trump's immigration plan, and he may address them in another big policy speech sometime this week. Eric?
Yeah, and we'll be addressing it in about 20 minutes from now. We'll have the political analysts trying to sort all this out. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you.
Connor Powell, thank you very much, Connor. Eric?
All right, back here at home, President Obama's summer vacation is over. He's returning to the White House, though, amid a continuing controversy. The president facing criticism for not interrupting his relaxation on Martha's Vineyard, or cutting his time off there short to visit the victims of the devastating flooding in Louisiana. White House correspondent Kevin Cork is traveling with the president, and he remains on Martha's Vineyard. Hi, Kevin.
Hey, Eric, good evening to you. You know, there are a number of opinions about this story and about whether or not the president should have made his way to Louisiana sooner, but there are some facts here as well. Number one, the flooding was clearly historic and obviously deadly, with more than a dozen already perishing in this particular storm. Two, the optics were terrible. There's no other way you can describe that. And number three, yes, the president did send his FEMA director and the Secretary of Homeland Security to the area, but that doesn't mean the people of Louisiana don't have a right to feel like they have been overlooked in this deadly flooding. I mean, the pictures really tell the story. Absolute devastation, the flooding consuming entire communities, Eric, and that's really at the heart of why so many people there are so angry. And you consider that when the president's out there golfing with Larry David and the Tony Martha's Vineyard rarefied air, it has a lot of people upset. Now, the cleanup does continue. The picture's stunning. Despite all the death and destruction, we want to certainly salute the good Cajun Navy, and that's all the good folks who came together to help their brothers and sisters in the bayou. But clearly, they have a great deal of work yet to come. It is also important, Eric, to point out the governor of Louisiana did say he didn't want the president to come down there too soon because his appearance would compromise not only the safety and security apparatus as they continue this recovery effort, it could actually take some resources away from where they wanted them. Take a listen.
I didn't want to divert these police officers, sheriff's deputies, and state troopers and other essential resources and assets to providing security for the president while they were needed in this region.
Meantime, in a statement, White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest said the president obviously will be there on Tuesday. And this statement really, I think, encapsulates what the White House wants to say. They said that the president is eager to get out there and get a firsthand look at the impact of the devastating floods and to hear more from officials about the response and how the federal government can continue to assist them in the cleanup. And that is certainly important, Eric, when you consider there is more wet weather in the forecast for the region. And so the long road to recovery could be even longer. And we'll certainly keep an eye on that as we join you from New Orleans and from Baton Rouge and the area on Tuesday. But for now, back to you.
Yeah, and our hearts certainly go out to everyone who's affected. And the governor even said he wouldn't mind if the president waited a week or two, but you'll be there this week, and we'll be following you. Kevin, thank you.
And the Cajun Navy is strong and resilient,
That
for
they
sure.
are.
And more in this story now as Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards pleading for help as the state recovers from a week of devastating flooding. Many residents now coming out of shelters to find their homes destroyed by high water. Meanwhile, crews still searching for victims of the flooding, which has already killed 13 people. Brian Yenes joins us live from our New York City newsroom with the latest. Brian?
Hi, Arthel. Well, you're right. Many residents coming out of shelters and seeing their homes for the first time. For many, an all too emotional moment. Some 60,000 homes damaged in this historic flood, a 1-in-1,000-year event in southern Louisiana, and water leaving behind mud and mold, soaked furniture, carpets, and lost photos and memories. Over 100,000 people have applied for federal assistance. Governor John Bel Edwards says the storm hasn't gotten the attention it deserves nationally, perhaps because it wasn't a named hurricane.
We really need help. Typically by this point in a storm, I think Red Cross would be receiving a lot more donations. I think there would be more volunteers signing up. Although we have some of that in place now, it would be very helpful if people would donate to the Red Cross, to the Baton Rouge Area Foundation, and also to come in and volunteer to help people get back in their homes.
The Democratic governor in that interview specifically thanked Republican nominee Donald Trump and his running mate Mike Pence for visiting Louisiana and putting a spotlight on the state during dire times. Horrifically, Floodwaters have caused coffins to become unearthed in at least 15 cemeteries across 7 parishes, according to the Louisiana Department of Health. Caskets floating, and now some families have to rebury relatives. No word yet on how many tomb sites have been damaged. Church groups, the Red Cross, residents, and family members of victims are all chipping in to clean up. The local Farm Bureau is offering meals. Some 3,200 people are now in shelters, though that's down from a high of 11,000. Now, if you'd like to help, you can donate to the Red Cross at redcross.org/donate or at SamaritansPurse.org. Of course, these are just 2 ways to help. There are others as well. Arthel?
Very good. And rebuilding is going to take some doing. Ryan Yennis, thanks so much.
No problem.
Eric?
Arthel, from those torrential floods down south to scorching wildfires out west. In Southern California, fire crews are now battling a series of wildfires as that state deals with historic drought conditions. You know, hundreds of residents are being asked to leave their homes, but officials say that not everyone is obeying those evacuation orders. Meanwhile, the summer is shaping up to be one of California's most dangerous fire seasons ever. Will Carr has all the details from Los Angeles.
Eric and Arthel, there are more than a dozen wildfires burning across the western United States this weekend, including the Cedar Fire in California, which is burning to the northwest of Bakersfield. So far, there's low containment. The fire has forced 1,500 residents to evacuate the area, while it's threatening almost 800 homes. Other residents say they're ready to leave quickly if they have to.
My car's packed, my animals are in my car, and we live, we're just real close to the main road.
To the south, the Blue Cut Fire continues to burn 60 miles east of Los Angeles. Fire crews there, though, making great progress. The fire is now 83% contained after burning 37,000 acres. Residents say they're thankful for all of the hard work the crews have put in on the ground.
I think this whole valley would have gone up had they not put up a battle right here and stopped the fire. Because you can see the hot spots where it just jumped and it skipped, and it could have been a lot worse than it was.
For many, the devastation has been heartbreaking. The Blue Cut Fire has burned more than 100 homes, and many residents are getting their first look at the destruction this weekend. Many of the wildfires currently burning are being fueled by drought conditions. You have to remember that California is still in a 5-year historic drought. So far, we've had more fires burn this year than this point last year. The total bill by the end of the year will be well over $1 billion to fight all the wildfires across the western United States. Eric and Arthel.
All right, thanks, Will.
And for more on the forecast, let's go to our senior meteorologist, Janice Dean, in the Fox Extreme Weather Center.
Arthel, temperatures are still very warm across the west. Look at this, 100 in Medford is your daytime high, 95 in Boise, 91 in Spokane, 91 in Billings, Montana. The good news is, as we head into Monday, we have a cold front that's going to move through, and it's going to knock back those temperatures. However, wildfires, 31 of them burning across the west. As you can see, not getting a lot of relief here in terms of moisture. We will get some rainfall across the southwest, but nothing really in the way of helpful relief across the northwest, the northern plains, or even California. So watching this wildfire danger continue well into next week. Future radar across the northeast, we have a cold front, same cold front that brought tornadoes across the Midwest and the Great Lakes yesterday, now moving across the northeast, the eastern seaboard overnight tonight. So be aware we could actually see some strong to severe storms. The tail end of this front across Texas and Louisiana, where we could see the potential for more flooding, especially for the Big Bend of Texas, South Texas, Central Texas, and we're still dealing with flooding, of course, across Louisiana with the historic flooding that we saw last week. The forecast precipitation as we head into Wednesday, the bullseye of the moisture across South Texas, still getting a lot of moisture for the Gulf Coast states, including coastal Louisiana, and then across the southeast and the northeast overnight tonight. Also watching the tropics. We're getting into that time of year, peak season, watching a couple of waves move off the coast of Africa. One in particular, Invest 99L. We're going to watch this very carefully as we head into Thursday and Friday as it comes very close to the Caribbean and perhaps the U.S. Late next week. But, of course, we will monitor it and give you the very latest. Arthel, back to you.
Okay, Janice Dean, thank you very much. Well, he took part in the raid that killed Osama bin Laden and wrote a tell-all book about it. Well, now this former Navy SEAL will not be allowed to keep the proceeds. We're going to tell you who's getting the money and why.
And remember Kentucky County Clerk Ken Davis, Well, she's back in the news. Why a federal judge has dropped the lawsuits filed against her.
And why Donald Trump's campaign proclaims he is having the best week yet in his race for the Oval Office, though others would disagree.
And time now for a quick check of the headlines. The Navy SEAL who wrote that tell-all book about the raid that killed Osama bin Laden. Well, he must fork over all the money he received from that book and speaker's fees to the government. That's more than $6.5 million. Justice Department finding that Matthew Bissonnette failed to have all the details in that book cleared in advance by the Defense Department. And a federal judge dismisses 3 lawsuits against Kentucky County Clerk Kim Davis. You may remember she spent 5 days in jail last year for refusing to give out marriage licenses to same-sex couples. The judge finding there is no longer an issue as the new state law has removed the names of county clerks from marriage licenses, partly as a reaction to her famous case. And it's the final day of competition in Rio as the Olympic Games come to a close. So far, the U.S. has a total of 120 medals. That's more than any other country. That includes 45 gold, 37 silver, and 38 bronze medals. And congratulations to all of our Olympians.
That's regretting that he said, if I have chosen the wrong words or said something in a way that I didn't intend, then I regret that. But this is exactly what people love. They love humility. They love accessibility. They love authenticity.
Donald Trump shaking up his campaign this past week and expressing regret for comments he has made in the past. The Republican nominee shifting the style of his speeches and bringing new leadership into the fold. It comes as Mr. Trump attempts to play catch-up in the polls. A recent Real Clear Politics average showing Hillary Clinton in the lead by more than 5 points. Let's bring in Boris Epstein. He is the senior advisor for the Trump-Pence campaign. Good to see you, Boris.
Good to see you, Tom.
You know what I'd like to do? Let's talk about your plan of attack for multiple big-ticket items coming up this week in the next 78 days. Let's talk about immigration.
Right.
As you well know, that Mr. Trump, throughout his campaign, he had deployed that he was going to deport all of the nearly 11,000 people living in America without documentation. But now he seems to be shifting that and saying that, no, maybe there is a possibility that we could kind of not do that. Is this campaign, promise turning into perhaps a campaign ploy?
No. And there's actually been a consistency, and he said that the first action will be to deport those who have committed crimes in this country. So illegal immigrants who have committed crimes, murders like the ones we saw in San Francisco, see all over this country, terrible crimes committed. So that'll be the first move, the first step taken. And then from then, he'll work with appropriate departments to figure out what the next steps need to be to make sure that American workers, American people are protected. That's fully in line with the policies that he's put out there over the last several months.
Okay, we'll go with that. And I want to, because I have a couple other things.
Sure.
As you well know, Mr. Trump is now trying to woo the Latino and African-American voters. He has the National Hispanic Advisory Council for Trump, newly formed, and he is saying that, listen, I want to make the GOP party the party to African-American voters once again. Again, we've got a short amount of time here. What do you think Mr. Trump can do to move on both of those fronts with both of those constituents?
Sure. I thought it's about shared responsibility. And Donald Trump, as a grandfather, a father, a business leader, and a leader now in America, believes that that shared responsibility transcends backgrounds, transcends ethnicity, transcends social class. And that is exactly what he's doing. He's reaching out to communities the Republicans have not been reaching out to as much over the last 10, 20 years, and saying, let's share the responsibility for this country together. Let's make sure that it's great for our children and grandchildren. And that message is very much resonating in not just the events, and you'll see it resonate across the polls as well.
And listen, it's certainly not a bad idea to have Mr. Trump reach out to all people, because he would be the president for all of Americans. Right. But specifically, Boris, how is Mr. Trump going to get his message to those communities? I understand that he's planning to visit. What's going to be his personal message when he's there face to face with some of the folks in the the inner cities?
So if you look at the inner cities, they're absolutely devastated economically, right? You look at cities like Chicago, Milwaukee, parts of Detroit. Before Detroit Detroit started being revitalized by businessmen like Dan Gilbert. So the message is this: we need to bring hope back to our inner cities. And how do you do that? It's an economic question. It's the question of bringing small businesses back. So the 15% corporate tax bracket goes a long way toward that, making sure businesses have incentives to go into inner cities and thrive, like they have in New York. Look at Bushwick. Look at areas of New York that have done very well. Again, it's starting to happen in Detroit. So that's the message: economic revitalization.
What about education?
Education is key. Look at a new city like Washington, D.C. The Washington, D.C. school system is the most expensive per pupil, and it's also the worst. So they're the most expensive per each student and the worst. That cannot be allowed to happen.
So I have 20 seconds. Do you believe that Mr. Trump is sincere and he's really going to do all the things that he's promising to do, especially for the Latino minority voters?
I don't just believe it. I know it for a fact. Donald Trump cares about every single American. He wants every American to have hope, to have opportunity, and to make America great for every American. Every American, not for any American, for any certain segment of the population, but for all Americans out there. And he will do that when he's president.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Boris Epstein, good to see you. Good luck to you and to your candidate.
Appreciate it.
All right, Eric.
All right, thanks, Arthel. Well, Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, he claims they're having trouble finding someone to stand in for Donald Trump during debate prep. The reason... It is the bottom of the hour now. Time for the top of the news. Republican National Committee Chairman Reince Priebus dismissing new calls for the RNC to cut off campaign cash to Donald Trump. You know, some critics want to divert that money to more viable candidates running for the House and Senate. Priebus saying, quote, "It doesn't work that way," adding that those critics do not understand how federal election laws really work.
On the other side, Hillary Clinton's campaign managers saying they're having a tough time finding someone who can stand in for Donald Trump for debate preparations. Robbie Mook saying, quote, "It's very hard to find someone to mimic Trump's reckless temperament."
Well, that's Donald Trump's new political commercial focusing on immigration, reaffirming the hardline approach he has to that issue. And the policy is setting the tone for the campaign, but it comes amid some new questions today over a recent meeting that he had this weekend with Hispanic leaders. Some of those leaders who attended that meeting at Trump Tower apparently saying that Mr. Trump is expressing openness to legalize illegal immigrants and maybe not deport 11 million of them that are believed to be here. The Trump campaign is denying this, so what's this all about? Brad Blakeman, former Deputy Assistant to President George W. Bush, joins us, as does Mark Levine, who is a radio talk show host and Virginia Democratic State Representative. Welcome to you both. Brad, let me start with you. Just a few moments ago, Boris Epstein, one of Donald Trump's advisors, just told Arthel there is no shift in immigration policy. So what do you think this is all about?
I think there is a shift, and you know, the thing people most like about Donald Trump is when he levels with people, and I think he's coming to realize now, after meeting with Hispanic leaders and going around the country, that he has to soften his approach in immigration. And one thing is for sure, Eric, we know that under Obama, the last 7+ years, he promised immigration reform in his first year. In 2007 and 2008, he ran on immigration reform. In his inaugural address, he talked about it. He talked about it days after that in a joint address to Congress, and did nothing. Donald Trump's going to do something, and I think what Donald Trump has come to realize is there's got to be a pathway to citizenship. We have to secure the borders, and that's the proper way to do things, because a president can't do things because he wants to do it. He has to do it by consensus. Donald Trump's not going to have a pen and a phone. He's actually going to work with Congress to get a solution.
Yeah, well, Mark, look, there are some who are saying that there's a congressional bill that Governor Pence supported when he was a congressman that basically would have people leave and then reapply for a visa to come back. Do you think that's what's going to be in the plan?
You know what? No one knows what's going to be in the plan. Donald Trump doesn't know what's going to be in the plan. Brad Blakeman doesn't know. His campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, said, it will be determined. Donald Trump has a habit of telling people what they want to hear. He tells people he's going to deport the 11 million. He tells that to a bunch of white people that don't like Mexicans. And then he tells Latinos, well, you know, there may be some path. We don't know what he stands for. Donald Trump doesn't know what he stands for. He never expected to get this far. This was all a lark. This was all a way to promote Trump brands. And now he's like the dog that caught the car. He's got the nomination. He has no plans. He'll just try to figure it out later.
Brad, do you think that's fair, that this is a lark?
No, it's not a lark. Donald Trump, if anything, his greatest strength is being underestimated. Just like it is being done now. He's being poo-pooed, and that's 16 other Republicans did that in the primary, and they did it to their detriment. And I think the more you discount Donald Trump, the more you're not facing the reality of the huge base of people, both Republicans and Democrats, who are sick of the status quo.
But Brad, you just said that he went back on his entire pledge. His whole pledge was build a wall, deport them all.
I did not. I never said that. No, I never said that. I said
he's looking for a path to citizenship.
Let Brad answer.
No. Look, Donald Trump said, first and foremost, we're going to secure the border. That's been the Republican mantra for years. The problem is this president never did anything about it. But we do know what Hillary Clinton. We do know what Hillary Clinton is going to do. She's going to grant amnesty for 11 million illegals in this country, and then she's going to leave. Donald Trump, I believe, after speaking to the constituents of Latino and Hispanic Americans, is going to come around to a pathway to citizenship. Because in this country, the good news is, no, a pathway to citizenship. It's not amnesty at all.
I support a pathway to citizenship.
Let Mark.
That's what Democrats support. But Donald Trump has been all over the map. His whole proposal has been deport the 11 million. We're going to have a strike force, and we're going to deport the 11 million. That's what got him a lot of votes in the Republican primary. Now you say he's switching, but his own spokesman won't say what side he's on. I think the answer is we don't know because Donald Trump doesn't know what side he's on.
So, Mark, on Thursday, quickly, he's going to have a big speech on this in Colorado on immigration on Thursday. Again, what do you think we expect, and what is he going to say?
I don't know. I think he'll try to be all sides to all people the way he always is. You know, he's a great con man. He'll give a really good sales job. He'll tell us he's going to make America great again. But specifically what will it entail, we don't know. Hillary Clinton has very specific policy proposals. You may like them, you may not like them, but she tells you what she's going to do. With Donald Trump, no one really knows.
Brad, what do you think he's going to say, and is he going to match Mrs. Clinton's proposals?
I think what Donald Trump is going to do is he's going to talk about securing the border, and he's going to be talking about a fair and equitable way of a pathway to citizenship for the people that are here. They don't get to jump the line. They have to go back. They have to pay taxes, and they have to come here the proper way. And if he does that, I think he'll get tremendous support in the Hispanic community. Because, Eric, one thing is for sure. We don't have the money to round up 11 million people. We don't have the assets to do it, both physical and personnel. And by the way, we don't have the will of the people to do it. So
Brad,
if you take all those three together,
that's a Democratic position.
No, it isn't. Amnesty is the Democratic position. Just give blanket because you see it as party building. We see it as securing the nation.
No, it's a pathway to citizenship. This is what President Obama has proposed. This is, in fact, the immigration reform bill.
He's never done it.
He can't do it because Republicans switch sides on it.
Well, we'll be talking about this with you two guys until Thursday. So we got to go now. We'll wait to see what he says on Thursday, and we'll get back to you for analysis. Brad and Mark, thank you.
Thanks.
Arthel?
Okay. Reserve Intelligence Officer with the Office of Naval Intelligence and Senior Fellow in the Program on National Security at the Foreign Policy Research Institute. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So let's go here. How much good can Vice President Biden do this week? How effective might he be? What's the Vice President's goal, and what might Mr. Biden accomplish?
Well, I think it's really, unfortunately, a Hail Mary pass. I mean, we saw after the coup, Turkish relations, U.S.-Turkish relationships have not been at an all-time high. I mean, the president of Turkey in June apologized to the Russians for downing their jet, and clearly the Russians and the Turks are trying to establish relations. So this is as much about terrorism as it is about trying to really reestablish ties with the Turks and make sure that, look, the Turkish base is a huge importance for the war against ISIS. So, you know, it really is an important thing. Unfortunately, I feel like we've lost a bit of prestige here.
Well, so as the world watches, and as Russian President Vladimir Putin and Turkish President Erdogan seem to be cozying up politically, I mean, does that put pressure on President Obama and the NATO allies to stay the course in the region, or to regroup and readjust the strategy there? And if it's the latter, then what changes should President Obama make as it pertains to Turkey, Syria, ISIS?
Yeah, no, I think that the administration really made a massive misstep here by allowing, frankly, the Russians to get a foothold within Syria, as well as Iran. And so now we're in a situation where we have Iranian overt and Russian overt forces fighting in Syria. This
communication with foreign policy as well as intelligence experts, are Putin and Erdogan colluding against President Obama or merely looking out for their own best interest in the region?
Well, certainly Putin is no friend of the United States. I mean, he has his interests. He wants to expand. He wants to increase Russia's sphere of influence. So I think his motivations are pretty clear. He wants a foot in. He got a foot in. He's part of the equation now. Insofar as the Turks, we're seeing Erdogan really surviving a coup by the skin of his teeth. And I think he's very openly, I don't think it's true, but he certainly openly blamed the United States. He accuses of harboring someone who he believes to be one of the leaders of the coup. And, I think he sees an enemy of the United States as perhaps an ally in this case, or perhaps even a bargaining chip or something to leverage here. I think the meeting in Turkey is not so much about terrorism and more about trying to, reaffirm alliances here. I mean, Turkey's a NATO country. We have strategic nuclear weapons there. It is a very, very troubling turn that, that frankly wasn't there a year or two ago. I mean, Turkey has never been anything but a U.S. ally. So this is very, very troubling.
Naveed Jamali, thank you for your analysis and breaking it all down for us. We leave it there. Thanks. See you again.